When Etsy first came onto the scene in 2005, it wasn't just another e-commerce platform. It was a revolution. For the first time, artisans and crafters had a dedicated space to showcase their unique, handmade creations to the world. Etsy wasn't just a marketplace, it was a movement led by its visionary founder, Rob Kalin, who believed in empowering artists to not only sell their goods, but also to influence society's buying habits, encouraging us all to choose products made with heart and soul. Back then, Etsy was all about the sellers. As one early user put it, everyone that I knew was opening up a little shop because it was one of the only places that was offering this platform and template. This sentiment was echoed by many who felt Etsy was more than just a sales platform. It was a place where artists could connect, share, and grow together. But as Etsy grew, so did the pressures to expand and adapt to a changing marketplace. In 2013, Etsy made a significant shift by allowing sellers to use outside manufacturers. What was once strictly a marketplace for handmade goods began to blur the lines. The term handmade was getting looser, one seller remarked. This shift made it feel like the soul of Etsy was slowly slipping away, replaced by a growing focus on scalability and profits. This change marked the beginning of a new era, one that would lead Etsy down a very different path. By 2015, Etsy had achieved what many startups only dream of. It became one of the first B corporations to go public, with a valuation of $1.8 billion. However, this milestone came with new challenges. As a public company, Etsy was now beholden to financially focused shareholders with a laser focus on growth. The once sacred vision of empowering artisans was now competing with the demands of Wall Street. Etsy had started as a revolutionary idea, a beacon for artisans worldwide. But as the company grew, so did the pressures to balance its original mission with the realities of being a public company. In the next chapter, we'll explore how these changes began to ripple through the Etsy community, affecting both sellers and buyers in profound ways. As Etsy ventured further into the public market, the cracks in its foundation started to show. The platform that once championed handmade, unique creations was now facing an identity crisis. By 2017, Etsy found itself at a crossroads. After going public in 2015, Etsy's leadership faced increasing pressure from shareholders to deliver growth. The challenge was clear. How could Etsy maintain its original mission while also satisfying the demands of the public market? The answer, for some, seemed to be in maximizing efficiency and driving revenue, often at the expense of the very sellers who had built the platform. In 2017, Josh Silverman took over as CEO, and his approach marked a significant departure from Etsy's founding principles. One of his first moves was to lay off 22% of Etsy's workforce, signaling a shift towards a more corporate, profit-driven strategy. Silverman pushed through fee hikes and introduced new seller programs designed to boost revenue. While these changes did improve Etsy's financial standing, they also alienated a significant portion of its community. One seller expressed the growing discontent among longtime users. "It's like Etsy forgot about us. We were the ones who made Etsy what it was, but now it feels like we're being pushed aside in favor of mass production and higher profits." At the same time, Etsy introduced a tier-based subscription model for sellers, which was meant to jumpstart growth but came with a cost. Sellers were now paying more to maintain visibility on the platform, and the pressure to conform to the new corporate-driven model was palpable. The culture clash was becoming increasingly evident. Internally, employees who had been with Etsy since its early days struggled to reconcile the company's original mission with its new direction. Externally, sellers were frustrated by the growing presence of mass-produced goods and the emphasis on fast shipping and high-volume sales, qualities that felt more aligned with Amazon than with Etsy's handcrafted roots. For sellers, the changes were profound. They were not only expected to meet new performance standards, like fast shipping and high ratings, but also to navigate the complexities of Etsy's evolving fee structures. Some felt trapped in a system that demanded more and more from them while offering less and less in return. As one disillusioned seller commented, "We're working harder than ever, but it feels like we're making less." Etsy used to be about the art, the craft, the community. Now, it's all about the bottom line. Despite these tensions, Etsy's financial performance improved. By 2018, sales were growing, and the stock was reaching new heights. But this success came at a cost, one that would continue to strain Etsy's relationship with its sellers. The pandemic, however, would bring an unexpected twist. While it brought unprecedented growth to Etsy, it also magnified the underlying issues. In the next chapter, we'll explore how the pandemic reshaped Etsy's trajectory and what it meant for the future of the platform. In early 2020, as the world grappled with the sudden onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, Etsy found itself at the center of an unexpected surge in demand. With physical stores closed and millions of people stuck at home, online shopping became not just a convenience, but a necessity. Etsy, with its wide array of unique handmade products, was perfectly positioned to meet this new demand. In April 2020 alone, Etsy sold over $133 million worth of face masks, a staggering 12 million units. This single product category highlighted how Etsy had become a go-to platform for consumers seeking not only unique gifts, but also essential items during a time of crisis. The pandemic was a boon for Etsy, observed many within the industry. The sudden surge in demand led to a massive increase in both buyers and sales. The number of active buyers jumped by 77%, and gross merchandise sales more than doubled in 2020, underscoring Etsy's pivotal role during the pandemic. As the pandemic drove unprecedented growth, it also accelerated underlying tensions within Etsy's ecosystem. The influx of new buyers and sellers, coupled with the increasing presence of mass-produced items, began to reshape the platform in ways that concerned longtime users. The surge in demand was not without its challenges. Sellers were suddenly inundated with orders, often overwhelming those who were accustomed to managing smaller volumes. At the same time, the rapid growth led to an increase in competition, as more sellers, some using questionable practices, flooded the marketplace. The distinction between truly handmade products and mass-produced goods became increasingly blurred. It was a double-edged sword, recalled one veteran seller. On one hand, sales were through the roof. On the other, it felt like the soul of Etsy was slipping away. It wasn't just about handmade anymore. It was about meeting demand, no matter what. Etsy capitalized on this momentum by introducing new revenue streams, such as charging sellers for advertising. This helped boost profits, but it also added to the growing frustration among sellers who felt squeezed by rising costs and the platform's shifting priorities. By 2021, Etsy's stock price reached an all-time high, reflecting the company's strong financial performance. However, as the pandemic's initial wave subsided, so did the extraordinary growth. Gross merchandise sales, which had soared in 2020, began to plateau. The boost from the pandemic, once seen as a windfall, was starting to look more like a temporary spike. Pandemic-related success is just that, a fluke, some industry experts noted. Etsy now faced the challenge of figuring out how to sustain growth in a post-pandemic world without alienating the very community that had made it successful in the first place. As the pandemic waned, Etsy faced a new reality. The temporary boost in buyer activity began to fade, leaving the company to contend with the same issues it had before, but now with added complexities. Seller dissatisfaction was at an all-time high, and the platform's reputation was increasingly being questioned. In December 2023, Etsy laid off 11% of its staff, a move that underscored the challenges the company was facing in maintaining its growth trajectory. The layoffs were a clear signal that the boom times of the pandemic were over, and that Etsy needed to recalibrate its strategy for a new era. The pandemic had provided Etsy with an extraordinary opportunity, but it also exposed the cracks in its foundation. As the world began to recover, Etsy's future became increasingly uncertain. Could it maintain its unique identity while also delivering the growth that shareholders demanded? The next chapter delves into Etsy's post-pandemic strategy and the mounting pressures it faced from both within and outside the company. At a crossroads, as the pandemic boom faded, Etsy found itself at a critical juncture. The extraordinary growth that had defined the previous 2 years began to plateau, leaving the company to grapple with the long-term implications of its rapid expansion. For Etsy, the post-pandemic period was not just about sustaining its business. It was about survival in an increasingly competitive and complex marketplace. In 2023 and early 2024, Etsy's quarterly earnings started to show signs of strain. Gross merchandise sales, GMS, once the company's shining indicator of success, began to decline. By the first quarter of 2024, Etsy's GMS had dropped by 3.7% compared to the previous year. The company's stock, which had soared during the pandemic, plunged by 12% in a single day after the disappointing earnings report. Our first quarter performance, while in line with our guidance, was pressured by the challenging environment for consumer discretionary products, CEO Josh Silverman admitted in a statement. The optimism of the pandemic era was gone, replaced by the harsh reality of slowing growth and increasing competition. But the challenges facing Etsy were not just financial. They were also cultural. The company's shift towards profitability and scale had alienated many of its original sellers. The very community that had built Etsy from the ground up now felt marginalized by policies that prioritized growth over authenticity. It feels like Etsy has forgotten who they are, lamented one longtime seller. The focus is no longer on handmade goods or supporting small artists. It's about how much money they can make, no matter the cost. The tension between Etsy's original mission and its current business model was palpable. In response to growing discontent, Etsy made efforts to clean up its marketplace, removing significantly more listings for violating company policies in the first quarter of 2024 than in the previous year. However, these efforts were seen by many as too little, too late. They talk about cracking down on violations, but the truth is, it's become a game of whack-a-mole, noted one industry analyst. For every listing they take down, more seem to appear. It's an endless cycle, and it's eroding trust in the platform. Adding to the complexity, Etsy faced external pressure from activist investors. In February 2024, Elliott Management, a well-known activist investor, acquired a 13% stake in the company, earning a seat on the board. The news initially boosted Etsy's stock by over 10%, but it also signaled potential upheaval. Activist investors are known for pushing aggressive changes to maximize shareholder value, often at the expense of long-term vision and culture. The arrival of Elliott Management could mean big changes, speculated some financial commentators. They're likely to push for cost-cutting, increased margins, and perhaps even more focus on high-volume sales. But at what cost to Etsy's identity? Internally, Etsy attempted to innovate and adapt. The company introduced a one-time $15 fee for new sellers, which provided a temporary boost to revenue. However, such measures did little to address the deeper issues plaguing the platform. Seller dissatisfaction continued to rise, with many feeling trapped on a platform that no longer served their needs but remained too dominant to leave. "We're stuck," said one frustrated seller. "Etsy still has the traffic, so we have to stay, but it's getting harder and harder to make a living here." Meanwhile, Etsy's management faced the daunting task of balancing the demands of shareholders, who wanted higher profits and growth, with the needs of sellers and buyers, who longed for a return to the platform's roots. As Etsy navigates these turbulent waters, the question remains, can it find a way to reconcile its original mission with the demands of a public company? Or will the pressures of the marketplace continue to drive it further from the ideals that once made it unique? The future of Etsy hangs in the balance, and the next chapter will explore what lies ahead for this iconic platform. The future of Etsy. Etsy now stands at a pivotal moment in its history. With its roots deeply embedded in the ideals of handmade craftsmanship and small business empowerment, the platform is facing the challenge of remaining true to its origins while also adapting to the realities of a rapidly evolving e-commerce landscape. The road ahead is fraught with uncertainties, and the decisions made in the coming months and years will determine whether Etsy can continue to thrive, or if it will lose its identity in the process. Etsy's leadership, under CEO Josh Silverman, has acknowledged the need for change. In response to both internal and external pressures, the company has committed to refining its policies and improving the overall experience for both buyers and sellers. However, these changes come at a time when the platform is under intense scrutiny from its community, its shareholders, and the broader market. One of the most significant challenges for Etsy is restoring trust with its sellers, the backbone of the platform. Many longtime sellers feel disillusioned, believing that Etsy has strayed too far from its original mission. They are calling for more stringent enforcement of the handmade ethos and a return to the values that once made Etsy a haven for artisans and crafters. To address these concerns, Etsy has pledged to clarify its definition of handmade goods and to take stronger action against those who violate the spirit of the platform. This includes plans to increase transparency around what qualifies as handmade and to implement more robust systems for detecting and removing inauthentic listings. But trust cannot be restored through policy changes alone. The community that Etsy built over nearly 2 decades is demanding more than just words. They want to see tangible actions that reflect a genuine commitment to the platform's founding principles. As Etsy navigates these internal challenges, it must also contend with external pressures. The involvement of Elliott Management, a powerful activist investor, has raised concerns about the future direction of the company. While some investors welcome the potential for increased profitability and operational efficiency, others fear that the focus on short-term gains could further erode Etsy's unique culture and community. The balance between shareholder demands and the platform's mission will be a delicate one to strike. On one hand, Etsy must deliver value to its shareholders, who expect consistent growth and returns on their investments. On the other hand, the platform's long-term success depends on maintaining the trust and loyalty of its sellers and buyers. Looking ahead, Etsy is exploring new ways to leverage technology to support its sellers and enhance the buyer experience. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are being touted as potential tools to help sellers optimize their pricing, improve search functionality, and better connect with their target audiences. However, there is a fine line between using technology to empower sellers and allowing it to undermine the personal, handcrafted nature of the platform. In the face of these challenges, Etsy's future remains uncertain. The company has the potential to reinvent itself and to find a way to balance growth with its core values. But doing so will require a clear vision, strong leadership, and a willingness to make difficult decisions. As Etsy charts its path forward, the stakes are higher than ever. Will the platform be able to reconcile the demands of the market with the ideals of its founders? Can it remain a champion of handmade goods and small businesses in a world increasingly dominated by mass production and automation? Or will Etsy become just another e-commerce giant, indistinguishable from the rest? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: the next chapter in Etsy's story will be one of the most important in its history.